So this session will talk a little bit about generative AI, the large language models. We want to give you some current applications that are already in use, and talk about some challenges, point to some challenges about implementing generative AI, and hopefully inspire you to do it. So let's first introduce ourselves. So my name is Karolina Szymanska. I am a strategic marketing advisor for technology companies. I've been working with EAM, with Maximo particularly partners, ecosystem for the last 10 years. And my degree in applied linguistics absolutely beautifully slots into exploring the LLMs for the EAM. So that's me in a nutshell. Alex?
Turn that on correctly. Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm a director at Maxstaff. I've been working in the Maximo space for 6 years now, and as a company, we've been around since. Maxstaff, the company, is about a year younger than me, so 1997. Everything we do is about helping with the maintainability of the IT processes within Maximo, test automation, performance testing, and so on. And a more recent thing that we've been looking at is generative AI. So that's why we're standing up here today to basically give you a kind of perspective on what we've been looking at and how we see the future of generative AI in EAM and enterprise IT is going. So thank you guys for joining us.
Oh, that will take getting used to. Thank you, Alex. And so let me start by saying that each of these slides could, at this point, make like a 45-minute presentation. So we will be gliding a little bit, but please find us. We were very happy to go into more details.
We are exhibiting.
We are exhibiting as well, yeah. Yes. Today we kind of stand on the brink of this great really revolution that generative AI can bring to our businesses, and it is really up to us of how do we want to approach this topic. And what is really generative AI? What are large language models? So let me first ask you a question. Who has never used generative AI? So who has never heard of ChatGPT? Right. So I've ventured and asked ChatGPT, for example, what are the most common questions that people are asking? So it came out with funny things like, how to optimize space travel, or how to come up with the strategies to communicate with aliens and things like that. But we are here today to use ChatGPT for business reasons, not for fun, because I'm sure for fun we've all really used it to a great extent. So I think we have to go to another one.
Yep.
Yes. So we've kind of checked a little bit, like what are the predictions for the business use of generative AI. So the Goldman Sachs predicts that $7 trillion will be spent on generative AI between 2024 and 2030, which only shows how big potential it can bring to the businesses when we use it properly. We also checked, and Bloomberg, for example, predicts 36.5% year-on-year increase in the budget spent by the companies on generative AI, on applying the generative AI strategies into the businesses. So this is pretty...
for anyone who pays attention to these CAGR numbers, that's a big number. So
yeah.
There's going to be a lot coming up. Right.
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
Okay.
So, what are the LLMs? I'll let Alex to
Okay, yeah.
talk in more detail.
So I'm going to start off by demystifying a little bit just what are large language models. We've all heard of your ChatGPTs and so on, and generative AI, and there's lots of terminology floating around. It's even more complicated in the AM space because a lot of the solutions that IBM are putting out and also supporting third-party vendors, they're all doing things, and it's all labeled AI. But there's so much AI out there. So just going to start off here. I just want to query the room. Got a couple of brands at the bottom there. I'm just going to whip through them. Who here's used ChatGPT? That's OpenAI. Let's have a show of hands. Yeah, that's about right. Okay. How about Llama? Has anyone touched Llama? Is there organizational implementations? Okay, couple of hands. We've got Claude as well by Anthropic. Okay, that's interesting. So I would strongly recommend, guys, if you are using generative AI already in your work, Claude is absolutely fantastic. It can do a lot of things better than ChatGPT. And finally, has anyone used Perplexity before? Okay, a couple of hands as well. Yeah, so obviously ChatGPT is the absolute sort of famous market leader in the space, but there are a lot of really, really powerful solutions out there. But let's talk about what are large language models. Let's demystify the concepts. Let's refine it from AI to LLMs, which is what we want to talk about today. So start off with, we've got machine learning. We've all probably heard the terminology of machine learning, but it probably doesn't mean very much unless you're an absolute expert. All machine learning means is compared to other forms of AI, it's learning through data. Okay, so we feed it data, and it's and it is able to identify patterns effectively. Next, we've got deep learning, another term that I'm sure jargon term we've all heard around. So yeah, it's a form of machine learning, unlike reinforcement or transfer learning or anything else like that. Deep learning just means it's unsupervised. We feed it the data, we feed it a large sample of hopefully unbiased and representative data, and it just starts learning by itself. Okay, so that's what deep learning is. Now we get to generative AI. It's a form of deep learning, and it's AI that creates. So that is compared. Computer vision is a great example of something that we do see with IBM's MVI solution, visual inspections. That's a computer vision style module, but that's not generative AI. Generative AI is just things that creates. And we go down to this bottom row. What's a large language model? So you can see some of my other bricks on this wall. There's video creation, image creation, music generation. A large language model is what we're talking about with ChatGPT, which is basically the text-based generative AI. I'm going to put that all together in a sentence. Basically, large language models are AI systems trained on extensive text-based data sets in an unsupervised manner to produce text according to patterns they identify in the data. It's probably a simplification. There's even more that you could say about it, but that's a good working model on in the context of all the AI terminology we see in our enterprise IT space, where do large language models fit in? So, at a broad glance, what are the capabilities? How can we take advantage of LLMs? First of all, there's one of the most obvious one that we can think. It's really, really phenomenal at just understanding text that's being presented to it. I'm sure everyone knows that you type in your question and it can understand a lot of things, including it can infer what you're doing, it can fill in the blanks, it can really understand the context of what you're trying to say, which makes it better than Google, which is why they called it the Google killer, for example. It's so much easier to use in that respect. But it's better at doing things like reading documents, text, reading paragraphs, reading data. It can do a lot of things, and it can understand all of this stuff as well. So we can take advantage of that. Inferral from context. Related to the last thing, you could feed it a document that might have partial information. Maybe you've got an introduction and a conclusion, but you want the body, or you want the conclusion, you've got the body and the introduction and stuff like that. You can say, I want the rest. Or I want you to tell me what's missing. And it should be able to do that. And the better and more specialized AI you have, the better it will be able to do that kind of thing. Again, what it's trying to do under the hood is complete patterns based on what it's seen in its training data. A lot of the foundation models are done on the internet, so it's basically looked at a lot of the internet, and it now has a lot of knowledge about what's most likely to come next. Executing tasks. I'm sure we've all used ChatGPT in the past to write me a document, write me an email, and so on. It's a great form of execution tasks. And I'm going to, later on these slides, talk about how as we move forward into the future, we're going to see it do a hell of a lot more in terms of task execution as well, other than just text-based composition. Finally, advice. I don't know if anyone here uses AI to provide advice at all, but we are we're tech nerds basically at Maxstaff, and it's really, really good for providing advice on specifications, new features, how does your product fit in, what can you put in, what's missing, what UX thing can you do, what functional thing can you do. We ask it for advice all the time on that respect. But again, in EAM, and as you'll see as we move on some of my examples, that advisory piece is really, really important as well. So, large language models in enterprise asset management. I've been teasing at this. So this next section I'm going to break into a couple of things. First I'm going to talk about some potential applications. These are things that we've produced as a brainstorm. Then I'm going to talk about some actual solutions that are available already. And I'm going to do a little touch upon what IBM's currently doing as well with LLMs. So we start off with this slide. I've split it into, call it, the relevant stakeholder departments that you see in EAM. Let's talk with support to start off with. Generative AI is probably most typically being used at the moment in support. Obviously, you've got your support chatbot, but some things you might not have considered. You can feed LLMs with documentation, for example, and then suddenly it becomes your documentation expert. It could be used to help with assisting on training or teaching. That's a really, really powerful thing. You know, if you want people to be able to self-learn, you can be a lot more productive if your AI solution effectively has the knowledge to be able to say, right, user queries what's going on. AI can give a very precise response. Language translation, that's actually the original impetus that got large language models. It was a Google project that was designed to help with their language-to-language translation. So if you've got a multinational organization, then yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic tool. I'm going to skip through these because I'm aware that we are running through quite quickly, but I will just quickly touch upon some stuff. Just note here from the business side, people who are using the sort of Maxstaff from a browser perspective, data analysis, data entry, drafting reports, especially ones which require verbose kind of like qualitative analysis, and IBM's working on a feature that they've recently put out with MAS9, which is work order intelligence, which I'll go into a little bit of detail in a sec. For your technicians in the field, remember what I was talking about with the advisory stuff. This stuff probably is not yet in the market. There is no such thing as these solutions. But as we move through the years, you will start to see more and more stuff to do with, right, I have a chat, I'm in the field, I've got my iPad, I've got a loaded version of my sort of chat or something like that, and I need to query, does this work for this regulation, or what should I do for this piece of equipment maintenance? You've fed it with, for example, maintenance manuals, for example. Safety advisor, obviously very, very important piece of thing, and that could be a fantastic application. So yeah, it could be a real game changer in sort of in the field Maximo usage. And finally, IT, as I say, we're an IT company, we use it all the time. And yeah, you will start, I'm sure your IT teams are already starting to heavily use AI where possible. So what LLM solutions can be used today? I'm absolutely certain that there are many sort of either startups or organizations who've started projects doing this. I'm just going to list 3. These are people that I know and have vetted their solutions and would be actionable tomorrow if you got in touch. One of them is a project that we're working on. Yesterday we ran a technology innovation group as part of the pre-conference user groups. We did a demonstration of this page intel. The idea is basically that it's a browser extension that can read what's going on your Maximo screen, and it can also pull data from doc stores and database stuff, and AI can basically, with a prompt, crunch all of that stuff together and then get sort of nice actionable insights. Example we used was service request qualitative analysis. So a user types in, my laptop's broken, it's driving me mad, and your technician kind of needs more information. So you send through to AI, summary of what's going on the page, what the asset numbers and stuff like that, sends it through, and then AI can evaluate that and go, yeah, you need to provide more information. On the other side, your technician can also pull, for example, your manuals for the asset and say, okay, this is what you need to do. It provides a sort of like step-by-step instruction guide. So that's just one example of how you could apply generative AI. If you're interested, come to our stand and we can talk about it a little bit more. Another sort of friend of ours, Athena Decision Systems, they are an offshoot of IBM's BPA wing. business process automation. And he's working with generative AI, aiming to try and reduce some of the sort of habits of AI to make things up, which we call hallucinations. And yeah, he basically says, right, so instead of just trusting AI to do everything, we're going to make an agent which queries IBM business rules and then puts it back into the AI for further specificity and context so that you basically have much, much more trustworthy and reliable AI responses. And yeah, he provided some examples that you can see below there. Strongly encourage, if that sounds interesting, to reach out to him. And finally, Aquitas Solutions, they're partners of ours, and they're working on a solution to use LLMs for free text field translation. So again, this is for multinational organizations. If there's a description field or something like that, and you'd like the people working with Maximo, possibly from their mobile devices or something, to understand what's going on, well, again, this solution is a generative AI-led solution which can automatically translate into the user's local language. Finally, what's IBM doing with LLMs? I should see on time. Yeah, we're good. What's IBM doing with LLMs? Yes, so I've done a little bit of research on that. I'd strongly recommend that you read. I know that there are some of the generative AI team with IBM here at the conference, so try and seek them out. But yes, they are working very, very hard, both broadly on generative AI, as you'd expect, but actually they're doing a lot of work with asset management solutions as well. You can see a quote from their blog there. But to try and break down my understanding, at least, of where it all fits in, they're not necessarily trying to compete with the likes of ChatGPT and so on, but what they are trying to do is improve on the transparency and trust that goes into both putting together and using generative AI models. So yeah, they've got their own foundation models. Another thing they're doing, they are trying to basically train things to be more business domain forward. So enterprise asset management, in our case, they are working actively on using it. And actually, the EAM is their kind of like poster child for non-IT applications of domain-specific AI models. And finally, it was great to see a very recent, obviously, MAS 9 was announced very recently, and they've got their first feature implemented, which is basically automated work order intelligent. I believe that it can do qualitative analysis of work orders and then produce failure code recommendations as a result. So that's a great example and a great start to what we're saying. And I absolutely know that IBM are going to be weaving in out of the box and as a standard more and more generative AI solutions as we move forward. Right, I'm going to hand over to Karolina now to introduce us to what are the challenges.
So I will just now shower you with a lot of questions to give you some food for thought of different challenges that we've identified. That's not an exclusive list, exhaustive list, sorry, by any means. But so, for example, how can we ensure that the data sets that we are feeding to our generative AI models are not biased, right? How can we make sure that they are inclusive of all asset types or all specific operational conditions that those assets can be used in? If we're talking about the hallucinations, how can we make sure that the AI is not just making things up, not giving us a totally made up information? Reliability. What metrics can we use to actually ensure that the data are, that are fed are accurate, that we can predict that our predictions are the right one for the needs of our maintenance, our specific maintenance strategy. The governance, for example, are there any governance structures that we can put in place to oversee that deployment of the AI models are on,
How can we make sure our users are using AI effectively and properly, and compliantly?
Yes. Transparency, again, how can we make sure that the data, the output that we have from generative AI is the right one, the clear one? How can we ensure that the technicians have, for example, a chance to put in data and feed it and make it learn, constantly from their own mistakes.
And if it does put out things, how can we ensure that it can source its information, let us know where it got that stuff from? So
exactly. Yeah. Another big thing is ethics as well. How can we make sure that the data that we are putting into our models are sourced responsibly? What are we doing about referencing, for example? How can we make sure that we're addressing those issues, yeah. Right?
And just say, I mentioned earlier, safety example. We'll probably see as time goes on more and more effective chatbots that can handle domain-specific things, such as safety in EAM. But we've got to be able to trust it heavily before we can start issuing actionable advice.
Yes, and trust is actually a big one, and that underpins the whole, anything that we do with generative AI, especially for the business reasons, is how to ensure that we get the right information, we put the right information in, we get the right information out. How can we ensure that there is a user buy-in, that the users, the people who are actually supposed to use it in real life, trust it and want to use it and will benefit from it. Another big one is like how, there will be good outputs, there will be bad outputs, right? There needs to be some checkpoints.
Yeah,
monitoring of it all, yes. And another big one is the users. How really to empower users not to look at the generative AI as a threat, but as a potential tool,
driver, yeah.
Productivity driver, or tool that can enhance their everyday work.
Yeah. So yeah, these are all challenges. But before we think doom and gloom, there are ways that, now this we're getting into the future, how can you guys start to think about resolving some of these challenges? And just to say that these are not small challenges. These are, you guys probably already realized that, yes, generative AI and ChatGPT has been talked about since effectively end of 2022. It's all you read about in the news, how AI is going to do this, how AI is going to do that, and revolutionize everything. And I'm sure you guys have realized it probably hasn't quite, it's not really made it into the EAM space and the Maximo space, and there's a good reason, and it's shared across enterprise IT, which is all of these challenges that we just talked about. There are many, many things, and you've got to remember, this stuff is very young. The first big foray, the first big popular one was ChatGPT 3.5, and that was a year and a half ago, if you believe it. It's only been a year and a half of everyone talking about generative AI. So in 2024, as I say, as we enter the sort of, call it, teenage years of generative AI and the world starts getting their head around, what are we going to see and what can we do to start handling some of those challenges we just talked about? So it starts off with more of a training piece, which is good prompt engineering. I don't know how much you guys have used it, but AI, and how much you work on refining your prompts to get even better and more precise outputs out of it. But prompt engineering in its own right is a skill, a talent. It's already being listed as effectively a job category, professional prompt engineer. And there's a reason for that, which is that the more context you provide the generative AI solution to work with, the better and more precise your responses will be. So if you have good prompt engineering, you make sure that you're doing it in a logical manner, you're including the right amount of information, you're making sure that it can work with the information you're giving it, you can already start to use generative AI in an enterprise IT context, and you can do that in a way that can really be trusted. The next thing would be additional software and agents. So the examples I mentioned a couple of slides. Oh, okay, attack of the board. Okay, yeah, so on a couple of slides previous, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to additional software and agents. What can we do to automate some of the information gathering and context production so that we can make sure that the AI responses, again, are not hallucinating, that they are using sourceable information, so they are using a lot of different things so that we can actually press the run button, and at the very least we know AI has gotten our information from this place, it's gotten this level of information, and what we've given it is probably giving a trustworthy response. Related to that, we've got Retrieval Augmented Generation. Apologies for the jargon concept, but it is actually going to be a really, really huge thing. A lot of people are talking, the next box is going to be about training and fine-tuning these AI solutions, but this RAG is a huge subject at the moment. The reason why is that you basically use solutions and different AI to intelligently pool, you're effectively mapping your documents and your data in a way that can be retrieved by AI solutions in a dynamic and effective way. So that's effectively an efficiency play when it comes to making sure that if I ask a question from AI, that it can get the right document, use it in the context, and then move on effectively. And finally, training and fine-tuning. I know that we'll probably see from the likes of IBM more and more domain-specific trained AIs that will probably be reliability or enterprise asset management related. It may be in your interest, though, as you move forward, as the budgets grow, especially for AI solutions, that you say, right, maybe we want to actually train a model on our data that's in our control so that we can actually get AI to have hyper, not just domain-specific, but organization-specific knowledge and understanding. So all of these things together are ways that we can start handling the challenges from the previous slide. And putting it together, I've kind of derived, call it a maturity model from some of the thought leadership that's out already on the web. The idea of this, as I go through it, you'll see we move up and we'll start off with level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. We're talking here about technical complexity, about how much effort, time, money, effectively, it will take to start getting trustworthy AI solutions for different things. So we start off level 1. Vanilla AI. I already mentioned, with good prompt engineering and with a compliant LLM, ones that you can trust aren't going to be used in training the ChatGPT and stuff like that. Your organizations are certainly already talking about how to procure generative AI in a way that is compliant, is not going to be leaking data. Provided you have one of those, and provided you've got your user training, that you know that your users can responsibly use AI, you already got a vanilla AI ready to go. They're fantastic. They can do a lot of things. And yeah, basic querying and advice is basically where you can start off with. And that in its own right will add a lot of value to, as you say, I mentioned support business users, technicians, and IT. All of them will benefit just from the vanilla AI. I'm sure many of you have already been using vanilla AI in your work, and you can attest to that. So if we add in, again, docs and data, automation procuring of docs and data, you start to make it practical effectively to say, I've got a question for AI, and AI can actually automatically source the data that it needs to be trustworthy, specific, and transparent. You can start getting into AI assistant territory. I mean, it's just a name I've given it, but basically it's AI that has access and can see your documentation, your documents, it can see your data, it can see lots of things, so it can start making very, very informed responses to your prompts. So yeah, an AI assistant plugged into Maximo, plugged into Maximo, but also plugged into wherever you keep your documentation, your manuals, your compliance rules, wider compliance rules, things that come from outside the organization and so on. Level 3, I can imagine we can start getting into automation. This is executing tasks, and we will already start to see, I mean, this sounds scary at this point. AI is going to start doing things that we can't see, but actually, I guarantee you it's where the future's looking. A great example I can think of is sort of low-level work order approvals, for example. You can totally imagine that if data is structured in a way that the organization can trust, then AI can do that approval on an automated basis, provided that there's monitoring in place, of course. It's already happening in things like the medical field for medicine approval and stuff like that. So, and there have been some horror stories included there. So yeah, I should think that at level 3 and above, we're starting to look really into the future. This is what we're going to start seeing in 2 to 5 years, but I'm giving you guys the sort of like perspective on how to think about maturing with AI as you move along. And finally, yeah, we get to that consultant perspective. And yeah, as I say in my sort of arrows there, this is where we're really going to have to need a domain or organization-specific generative AI model plugged into your Maximo system. Maybe it has retrieval augmented generation. It's going to need to be a complex data retrieval, and the brain itself of the AI is going to need to be knowledgeable in order for us to trust it to do things like, I just have a casual question, is this safe to do? How does this thing work? And that it will actually produce sort of trustworthy, transparent responses. But again, we will definitely be seeing this over the next 5 to 10 years or so. So just be aware, like some of this is available today. Some of this may be available if you've got a big enough budget, but yeah, we will start to see, or companies doing a lot of this automation and consultant stuff. And yeah, this is what the future looks like effectively. As I say, it's derived from other places that I've found maturity models. So yeah, hopefully you guys will start moving up this ladder basically as we move forward. Just give some use cases to ground this. Yeah, vanilla AI, perfect for translation. I talked about that Aquita solution before. Yeah, you can trust AI 100% to translate description fields and other things. So yeah, that's a great thing. Another example, as I say, just querying advice. That's the sort of thing we use. The way we use AI day to day is still value added. AI assistant, so if you've plugged in your AI into Maximo, then yeah, you can probably start making queries based on asset specs. So if I've mentioned that page intel solution that we're working on at the moment, you know, if it can see what's happening on your Maximo screen, then it can probably take all the data ahead and start demystifying, and it can pick up, especially on complex page data, it can pick up the relevant things and just regurgitate back to you what's important. So that cherry picking concept of information is a really fantastic example. AI automation, I mentioned automated work order approval already. We're going to see a lot of AI working as a sort of middleman agent in our Maximo workflows. So yeah, and finally, yeah, EAM consultant. I've already touched upon this a lot, but yeah, you technicians or business users or anything, asset optimization or reliability optimization, technicians in the field getting things. How does this thing work? Give me the instructions for fixing a pump or something like that. We're going to see this in the future. This is going to happen, and I think that's very exciting, personally. So conclusion. Yeah, I mean, I've kind of said it all now, just to really wrap it up in terms of how you can start working on activating things. I say look at the middle of this. Use cases. Start coming up with use cases. Download these slides if you like. Look at them, come up with your own use cases. Where do we think some of those capabilities that I mentioned before, read and understand, infer from context, give advice, or execute tasks, can we do any of that today, right now? Can we do that with with a level 1 vanilla AI, or can we get a solution that can start sourcing data for us? Start with the use cases. Work from the capabilities, go to use cases, work out the resources available to you. As I've mentioned, some of the level 3 and level 4 stuff's probably a little bit out of reach to start off with, but those level 2 and level 1 stuff, you will start getting use cases where you genuinely could have some really, really cool, automated and valuable and useful AI solutions coming out. As I say, powerful EAM solutions is what you get. And this is an iterative process. Keep assessing. You know, I'm certain that your organizations are already working hard on getting generative AI solutions in, probably talking with the likes of IBM and so on to see what can be provided. You know, as hopefully you'll take away today, it's a case of growing with the technology, learning as we move on, adding power, adding functionality, refining in a way that works for your organization. So that's pretty much it. I have got one more slide. It's on considerations. This is really for you guys to download afterwards. It's just a kind of like checklist of things that you might want to start looking at. It's by no means comprehensive, but it is a good place to start. This security point is a huge one, and I saw a lot of you nodding when I was talking about procuring a compliant AI solution. Definitely something that you'll want to consider, something that I know that OpenAI offers a enterprise strength and private solution. But yeah, make sure you cover that. Again, I've talked about the additional solutions, so I won't go into any more detail. But yeah, in terms of governance, you know, trust. How can we make sure that we get good governance and responsible AI usage? And that's more organizational than technical, right? We want to make sure that, that we're using it properly and that we're implementing it properly as well. So we're going to have to start developing policies around AI to make sure that we're using it right. And yeah, just consider the model as we move on. And really the point of this is to say this level 1 and level 2 may not be level 3 and level 4, it may not be a full automation, it may not be an EAM consultant. This is still really, really useful, okay? So thank you very much. Happy to take some questions.
Let's go back a couple of slides. Slide for the maturity model.
In time? Before?
Yeah, the one before that.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So the additional software agents and the training or fine-tuning, what is the difference there? The reason AI would be hallucinating or would be biased is because it's not properly trained, I'm thinking. But what is the additional software part? Maybe you can explain on that a little bit.
So it's a really, really good question. The distinction is really important. So I'm going to start off with the training. So AI is trained on large data sets. Those large data sets are not necessarily, call it EAM specific in the context of this discussion, okay? So we will need to train it on EAM specific data sets, call it work order data or documentation data or something like that. And what we're doing is we're fundamentally changing the brain of the AI so that it understands and can give more verbose, more detailed answers that are domain specific. And I mentioned earlier that you could also fine-tune to your organization as well, to your workflows, to your data, to your processes. The difference with this, though, is that this is kind of like, call it I don't want to disparage it because it's by no means a dumb solution, but it is a simpler solution, which is effectively your vanilla models already work because they can understand what you feed them. So if we have additional software that can provide, for example, let's say our prompt is, how do I do this? And then I copy and paste a document into that, well, it's both reading our prompt and it's reading the information in our document. So what I mean when I say additional software and agents is stuff that can automatically source additional context data without having to retrain at great expense and time and data and effort. You can already get the native capabilities of AI to read and understand. So effectively, you're providing your prompt context by using that. So that's kind of what I mean by these additional software and agents. And this is the stuff that is being looked at, these two, are what's being looked at today to effectively have a low-cost, sort of efficient way of getting AI trust and precision out of our vanilla AI foundation models. Foundation models just means kind of like vanilla AI, by the way. Yes, wait for the mic.
Yeah, on that note, for level 2, where your AI would have a deeper knowledge of your Maximo data and your documents, is there an easy button coming with Mass where we can do that, I'll call it learning directly, or is that something we have to do with a third party, or how would we do that as a customer?
I understand that IBM is here that can answer that question more precisely. That would be great. But I don't know, is anyone from IBM here that is able to field that? Otherwise, I'm certain that that's something that they're working on. And yes, there are also third parties that say we're working on stuff like that.
I'm from IBM.
Yeah.
So right now we're working on that additional software agent. It's called Mass Assistance, or actually Maximo Managed Assistant. So it can look at your data and also call the LLM models to give you, do I need to create a work order, for example. It looks at what's your problem. Seems like my asset is having this problem. Looks like you need a preventive maintenance for this asset. Let me create a preventive maintenance for you or work order for you. All of that is part of that additional software agent called Mass Assistant, which we are working on. So you will still have to enable it, but it will be part of the software once it is there.
Can that read documents as well?
Yeah, all of the LLM models, as long as it has the source, it will be able to go to your existing static data for work orders as well as the documentation for that particular asset.
Is there a release version for this?
No, I can't comment on the release.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I mean, we are kind of getting to time anyway, but if there is anything, if you want to explore any of these concepts or more, we are exhibiting over, that's opening tonight. yeah, we really want to have a conversation with you guys about AI and yeah, all of this stuff. Really, this is the way forward. So yeah, if you're adopting AI today, you're a pioneer. Okay, especially in the AM. Excuse me, especially in the AM. So yeah, start thinking about it. Start game planning. Really. A lot of it is available to you as we speak. So yeah, start having conversations. Really. Thank you very much.